Alright, what's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Elias, I'm a photographer located in Athens, Greece, and in this video I will try to make a list about what I think are the best lenses for the Nikon Z-crop mirrorless system. Basically the Nikon ZFC, the Nikon Z30 and the Nikon Z50. These are the only three cameras that are available for the Nikon crop Z system, and I want to make a list in order for you to make a choice about what lenses to invest in and what lenses to avoid, at least in my opinion. So a few disclaimers before we start talking about the lens list. I will not include any old f-mount lenses. Personally, I'm not a huge fan. Actually, I'm not a fan at all of adapted lenses. Unless they're vintage or film lenses or something like that, then I don't really see the point to adapt any older lenses into this new mirrorless system. I don't like to screw and unscrew all the time an adapter in front of my camera and my lenses and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I will just not include any older adapted lenses. But if I had to choose to adapt one or two lenses, I would only adapt the Nikon 35mm 1.8G, which is a really low budget but excellent lens for the price. And the other lens that I would also adapt is the older Sigma 17-50 f2.8, which is a really versatile zoom lens. We don't have something like that yet for the Nikon Z system. Other than that, I wouldn't really bother on buying older gear. If you have older gear, that's alright, but I wouldn't invest in older f-mount. And one second disclaimer is that I will try to not include really expensive lenses over here. It would be really easy to recommend the most expensive lenses that cost 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 euros, but I don't think that really high-end and expensive gear is the gear to choose for these kind of bodies. I think that most people that own these cameras, they don't have the budget to reach for that high-end glass. Like I personally cannot reach that high-end glass, so obviously I will not sit here and recommend you something that I personally cannot buy and wouldn't buy, to be honest. If I had the money to buy 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 lenses, I wouldn't own a Nikon ZFC. I would just do my professional work with a Nikon Z8, for example. And one third disclaimer over here, this video and this list over here is my personal opinion. You don't have to take my word for it. You can always make your own research. And if I don't recommend your lenses inside here, your favorite lenses, you can tell me all about it down in the comments. If you disagree or agree with me, you can always tell me down in the comments what your opinion is. My opinion is not always the right one, so don't be afraid to talk to me and to educate others about your own opinions. Also, before starting out this video, if you're new here, consider subscribing, because if you want to see the Nikon Z crop system being used out for street photography, travel photography, portrait photography, professional photography, whatever it might be, we're doing all of this kind of stuff here in this channel. So yeah, if you like to see that type of content, then definitely subscribe and help me out by liking this video. Anyways, I don't want to waste any more of your time. Let's continue on with the video. So let's start off by talking about the wide primes that are available and I recommend for this mirrorless Nikon Z system. Obviously, the best choice over here is the Viltrox 13mm f1.4. This lens is a really wide angle. It's basically a 20mm in terms of full frame, and with that 1.4 aperture, it's great for filming, it's great for vlogging, it's great for low light photography, and obviously astro photography, and not to mention other types of photography where you kinda need a wide angle, like interior or architect photographer and all that kind of stuff. Personally, I don't own this lens yet, but it's on my list, it's on my radar. I have used it from time to time before. So if you like that really wide field of view, then the Viltrox is definitely your best shot out there. And also if you like astrophotography, then I think that Viltrox lens is also really great for that one. It costs around 500 euros or dollars, so it's definitely on the more expensive side of the lenses, but it's definitely the most value for money lens from all the wide angle lenses in this list. So the next lens that I recommend if you really like wide angle lens photography is basically the Sigma 16mm f1.4 as well. It's one of the most popular lenses on the Sony crop system and many people own it, many people swear by it. It's also cheaper than the Viltrox. It's around 400 euros or dollars. If you like something at around that focal range, then the Sigma is definitely worth it, and it's one of the lenses that you should definitely pick up. So the next lens that I somehow recommend, I don't know if I recommend it anymore, but it's basically the Viltrox 23mm f1.4. So the Viltrox 23mm f1.4 used to be a really affordable lens. It's still my most used lens on this Nikon Z50, and I shot a christening, and also I will shoot a wedding with that lens in a few days. Right now it costs around 400 euros or $400 on the Viltrox site. I cannot recommend it at that price point. If you can find it anywhere cheaper at around 250 euros or dollars, that's how much I paid 1 year ago, then it's definitely value for money. But at that price point, I wouldn't really consider that Viltrox lens. So the next lens that I really recommend is basically the Nikon 24mm f1.7. It's a direct competitor against the Viltrox, but it's smaller, more lightweight. On the other hand, it's plasticky, while the Viltrox is metal. To be honest, the Nikon has better image quality while being smaller. You lose an extra stop of light with that 1.7 aperture, while the Viltrox has 1.4, but that's not a big of a deal. I also made a video where I'm comparing these two lenses. I will link it somewhere over here or down on the description. So if you want to choose between the Viltrox or the Nikon, then you can check out my comparison review video and find all your answers there. Right now the Nikon lens is around 300 euros or dollars. It depends on where you shop, but at that price point it's really value for money, and it's also a Nikon native lens, which I'm really happy about that Nikon made such a small lens with such nice image quality at that price point. And lastly, about the wide angle field of view prime lenses, one lens that I really recommend and I also personally own is the TT Artisan 27mm f2.8. So this is a really small lens. It's made out of plastic. It's really lightweight, and it's also really cheap. It costs less than 150 euros or dollars. It also has autofocus, so at that price point nothing can beat this lens. If you just want a walk around lens and you don't want to spend more than 150 euros with autofocus, this is your best lens. I also made a review about this lens. You can always check it out down in the description. I will link it or somewhere over here. I'm not completely sure where it's going to be, but I really love this lens. It obviously has some flaws at that price point, but to be honest, for general photography and for traveling, it's a great optic. Also, one small side note, I can also recommend you to not buy any of these lenses and save your money and get the new 27mm f1.2 from Viltrox. It's not announced yet for the Nikon Z crop system, but it's out for Fuji. And again, these newer 1.2 lenses from Viltrox, they're top quality. It will cost around 500 euros when it's out. So yeah, it's a great quality lens, and I think it's worth to wait for it and to eventually get it. So what wide prime lenses you shouldn't buy? And basically, I will start off by saying that you should avoid the older kit lens that came with the Nikon Z50, the Nikon 28mm f2.8. I don't see the point on this lens, to be honest, other than it being aesthetically pleasing with that SE version, with that older vintage version. But since we have the Nikon 24mm f1.7 on a similar price point and with that 1.7 aperture, then I don't think there's quite the reason to even bother by getting that 28mm f2.8. The Nikon 24mm replaced it quite easily. Unless you have other Nikon full frame cameras, then I don't really see the point on owning that 28mm f2.8. Another lens that I cannot recommend is the Nikon 26mm f2.8. That lens is also made for full frame. If you own a Nikon full frame camera and you want that really small form factor in a lens, then that lens is great, to be honest. But for the APS-C, since we have the Nikon 24mm f1.7 on a really smaller budget, yeah, there is actually no question about it. And I also wouldn't recommend any of the 7 Artisans or TT Artisans wide angle manual focus lenses. They might be tempting because they are really low budget, most of the time around 80 euros or something like that, but the image quality is terrible. Personally, I'm a fan of bad image quality. It sometimes can bring out character to your images, but these manual focus lenses, to be honest, they don't bring out that character. They just make your images look bad. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend 7 Artisans and TT Artisans manual focus lenses. And since we're talking about manual focus lenses, there's also the Voigtlander 23mm f1.2. So many people swear by this lens, many people recommend this lens. In my opinion, it's not that worth it. I know this might sound really controversial. The rendering of the images is beautiful, the colors are beautiful, the character of the images is beautiful. I cannot disagree with that. But at f1.2, this lens is not sharp at all. You just have a soft image, which is not all that great. And with that price tag, I personally cannot really recommend a manual focus lens, all that being so expensive. It comes at around 500 euros, I think, or dollars. If you find it somewhere used and you really like the look of the images and the rendering of all these images that you see online, then by all means go out and choose it. Voigtlander makes one of the best lenses out there. Personally, I wouldn't give 500 euros and invest on a manual focus lens like that. But if that sounds something like you, then yeah, I cannot judge what people do with their money. All right, let's zoom in a little bit further and talk about the normal focal lengths around 30, 35mm and up to 50 or 60mm. And the lenses that I would personally recommend is first and foremost the Sigma 30mm f1.4. It comes at around 300 euros. It's definitely not the best optical performer. It's for sure the worst of the Sigma trio, but at 300 euros you get a lens which is optically really good. It's not the best, but it's really good, and you have really nice autofocus, and at 30mm you get a really nice all-around lens. After that, at the same price point, we get the Nikon 40mm f2. It's a really nice performing lens. It has great image quality. The aperture is not so bright at f2, but to be honest, f2 is quite great. The Nikon 40mm f2 is a really nice option if you like that 40mm focal length on a crop camera. And lastly, the last autofocus lens on that focal range that I really recommend is the Sigma 56mm f1.4. The Sigma 56mm f1.4 is a great portrait lens. It is really sharp. It has great autofocus capabilities. In my opinion, it's the best 50mm that you can get for your Nikon Z crop system camera. Yeah, there's not much to say. It's razor sharp, it's really fast at f1.4, and the autofocus is great. Good job Sigma over here. Thank you for being on the Nikon Z crop system. The manual focus lenses that I can recommend at that focal range is basically the 7 Artisans 35mm f0.95, a crazy fast aperture over here. Yeah, it costs at around 250 euros, and optically it's not all that bad, to be honest. It's one of the lenses that I can say it brings out more character to your images, and at that price point, yes, I can easily recommend a manual focus lens to someone owning a Nikon Z crop system camera. And the other lens that I can also really recommend, and I'm also owning it, is the Art 50mm f1.2. It's a manual focus lens. It costs only $100 or even less. It's really sharp even at f1.2. You can see here on these images that even if we zoom in, we get really nice resolution. The build quality is also excellent. I have also made a review about this 50mm f1.2 from TT Artisans, which you can check somewhere over here on the top or down below. I will link it somewhere. If you want to check out what this lens can do, then for sure check out that review. But again, at that price point, you get some really nice image quality with lots of character and with also nice sharpness. And the 1.2 aperture, 1.2 with less than 100 euros and with good performing optical formula, yeah, that's rare to find. So, which lenses I wouldn't recommend for you to buy? First and foremost, the Nikon 50mm f1.8. The Sigma just performs better, to be honest. If you don't own a Nikon full frame camera, then I don't see the point on picking the Nikon in front of the Sigma. The Sigma 56mm f1.4 is faster and sharper, so yeah, that's about it. I would also recommend the Viltrox 56mm f1.4 just because the Sigma exists. The Sigma is way better and it's way more value for money than the Viltrox 56mm 1.4. It performs better, it has better image quality, it has better autofocus, there is not much else to say. And also, I wouldn't really pick up the Viltrox 33mm f1.4 just because the Sigma 30mm f1.4 exists. Again, the Sigma is slightly better, but it's better in any way. So yeah, I would choose the Sigma in this regard. I wouldn't also recommend the 7 Artisans 25mm and 50mm f/0.95. Obviously, I recommended the 35mm a little bit earlier, but these two lenses, the 25 and the 50mm 0.95, they're terrible. They're terrible. The image quality at 0.95, yeah, is not worth it. It's not worth it at all, to be honest. Just grab the 35mm if you want a 0.95 lens. Okay, let's now talk about the semi-telephoto and portrait lenses. And obviously over here there's only one competitor out there. It's the Viltrox 75mm f1.2. This lens is generally new. It's the lens that I will pick up for myself this month over here. Before this lens existed, I would always recommend the 85mm 1.8 from Viltrox or from Nikon. It depends on the price. But the 75mm being a 1.2 lens, it creates that beautiful autofocus backgrounds. And the optical formula of this lens, even at f1.2, it's razor sharp. It renders the images so great. It's a lens that will make your money back for sure, for sure. I cannot wait to grab this lens for myself. I have used it on a few Fuji cameras and I cannot wait to use it on my Nikon Z50. The autofocus is not all that great at f1.2, but image quality, oh my god. And it only costs 500 euros or dollars. Great value for money over here. I wouldn't look anywhere else for a portrait lens. Like I said, the lenses that you shouldn't buy in this focal range is obviously the Viltrox 85mm 1.8 and the Nikon 85mm 1.8. These two lenses, they are full frame glass, and since we have the 75mm lens from Viltrox, there is no point on getting these two portrait lenses for your Nikon Z crop system. So I think that we covered all the prime lenses that are logically priced for a Nikon Z crop system user. Let's talk a little bit also about the zoom lenses that I recommend. And over here, personally, I can recommend almost every single zoom lens that Nikon makes. The Nikon Z zoom lenses, amazing glass to be honest. Let's start off by wider and go more telephoto. The Nikon 12mm to 28mm power zoom, it costs at around 450 euros or dollars. Great value for money, great optical formula. If you like a zoom lens at that focal length, then that's the only choice that you have, but it's also a really nice choice, to be honest. Great lens. After that, the Nikon 16 to 50mm, the general kit lens that comes with your camera. Excellent lens. I use that lens all the time for my street photography, when I'm hiking, when I'm traveling. Great lens, amazing sharpness, best kit lens out there. I'm really proud of Nikon for producing that Nikon kit lens. After that, I really love the Nikon 18mm to 140mm. It's basically the lens that you can grab and have it on you for almost everything. You get that really wide angle of view, and you also get that really telephoto look at 140mm. It's a one lens to rule them all. It is a little bit pricey at 600 euros or dollars, but I think it brings a lot of value and you can get so many different images while having that lens on your bag that I can see it being considered value for money. The image quality is all around great. It struggles a little bit at night photography because of the darker aperture, but so do all Nikon zoom lenses for the Nikon Z system. They're all really dark lenses. That goes without saying, I think. And lastly, let's not forget the 50mm to 250mm kit lens. It is a little bit pricey at 400 euros if you buy it separately. Just get it on a bundle with your camera or try to find it used. It's a great lens, it's really sharp, and yeah, that's just about it, I think. If you need a telephoto, that's your only option, but it's a great option, to be honest. Great image quality, great price, it has a lot of value. So let's also talk about what I really want to see on this Nikon Z crop system. I really want to see a lens like the 18mm to 50mm f2.8 Sigma that is available for Sony cameras, or the 17mm to 70mm f2.8 from Tamron. These kind of zoom lenses are really useful for professional work or for a lens to rule them all. And lastly, what I really want to see out there, not personally for me, but for all my wildlife photographers out there, I want to see a lens that will give us a little bit more telephoto reach other than the 250mm kit lens. I know that Nikon produces some excellent telephoto lenses for their Nikon Z full frame cameras, and I know that you can adapt these lenses to your Nikon Z crop system, but I don't think that a beginner or an enthusiast can afford to buy these premium Nikon Z telephoto lenses. I really want to see a crop system Z lens that will give us just a tiny bit more reach. I would love to see that, and I think many people that love to photograph the birds or other squirrels, I don't know, all the wildlife that lives close to them, I think these people would really appreciate that type of lens without spending a huge fortune on full frame glass. I'm sorry if the video was long enough and if you guys got tired. This video took me way too long to do because I had to do all this kind of research. I had to check out reviews, sample images, compare all these different lenses and make a huge list out of them. If your opinion is different from mine, you can always make a comment down below and let everyone know, me, myself included, what your opinion is about certain lenses. And if I forgot any lenses that exist at a reasonable price point, then also let me know down below. So yeah, let me also know down below what your current kit is or what your upgrade plans are. I really want to see what other people think about getting or what they use and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we'll leave you guys by saying a huge thank you that you choose to spend some of your valuable time by watching my content. It really means the world to me. And yeah, I'll see you all later. See you next time. Take care. Peace.